Most people think of the Antichrist as an extremely evil person who forces everyone to worship Satan and who is somehow connected to the end of the world. While some Christians want him to appear so that Armageddon may begin, many Christians fear him. Let's take a closer look of the story behind Antichrist. Hey everyone, welcome to Rapture Decoded. You've come to the right place if you want to find out more about the biblical apocalypse. We've created this useful introductory video just for you. You never know when you might need it. We'll be looking at the book of Revelation and the Bible as a whole, viewed from a secular, non-religious standpoint. The book is highly symbolic and certainly wasn't meant to be interpreted literally. As a result, at various points throughout the video, we'll elaborate what some of the symbolism might represent using the interpretations of biblical historians. Now, let's start decoding. It's strange how seldom the Bible addresses the Antichrist, given that he is the main protagonist in its narrative. In truth, only 4 times do we see the term Antichrist, and all of those times are in the book of John. John, however, makes no specific mention of a bad character that will appear at the end of the world. All those who reject Jesus, according to him, are categorically included in the list of Antichrists who have already existed. However, what do you believe if you're not Christian? Early Christians were unconcerned with the Antichrist, even outside of the Bible. The idea of a single person who would rebel against God comes from Daniel in the Old Testament. Despite the fact that he never used the term Antichrist, however, Daniel did have a particular someone in mind, Antiochus Epiphanes, the king of Palestine. He wasn't referring to some undefined malevolent force from the future. He was criticizing a certain person as being awful. The identity of the Antichrist was not finally recorded until 1,000 years after Jesus' passing. Adso, a monk, was essentially given complete freedom to invent anything when the Queen of France asked him for particular specifications. Adso's letter to the Queen became as well known as anything could have been in the Middle Ages, and for hundreds of years what he claimed concerning the Antichrist was, for lack of a better phrase, Satan. The Queen was concerned that she was living in the final days and wanted to know what to watch out for. Adso thought that the Holy Roman Empire's demise would herald the appearance of the Antichrist. He was going to be the most evil person who ever lived. He was going to be born a Jew in Babylon. He would resemble the return of Christ, nevertheless, in many ways. To minister, work miracles, and complete the temple's restoration. He would travel to Jerusalem. He would be followed by everyone. But for 3.5 years, he would persecute Christians. Thankfully, the true Jesus would arrive to overcome him. Prior to another monk's additions in the 1100s, the medieval concept of the Antichrist was consistently documented after Adso. Joachim of Fiore was so fixated on the Antichrist that he gained fame during his lifetime as the expert source for prophecy. Joachim was unquestionably the most important apocalyptic thinker ever, second only to the author of Revelation. He believed that the end times were already here, but Joachim predicted that there will be numerous antichrists over time. Some of them have previously lived, including Nero, Muhammad, and Saladin. They were all antichrists in general, but there would be one who would symbolize the beginning of the end times. Gog appears in Revelation to engage in combat with the Christians. Only through God can victory be achieved. After a millennium, Joachim finally made the link between Revelation and the Antichrist by tying the last Antichrist to Gog using that name. When Martin Luther first began his life as a monk, he had some excellent suggestions for how the Catholic Church may be improved. He issued his 95 Theses and thus began his own branch of Christianity, which would become Protestantism when no one would listen to him. Following that, he became involved in a conflict with the Pope, making it somewhat handy for Luther to later come to the conclusion that the papacy itself was the Antichrist. Luther was forced to reach that conclusion, although not wanting to, because the Catholic Church would not admit there was a concern with privileges and buying for salvation. He believed that Catholicism, and in particular the leader of it, were purposefully attempting to deny Christ, while also attempting to stand in for Jesus by pretending to be his representative. These factors turned the current pope and all popes into the Antichrist. For hundreds of years following Martin Luther, people have stopped considering the Antichrist as a single individual. The Antichrist vanished into history. But being the Antichrist, that is, being opposed to Christianity, became popular. Older texts that simply relate to Antichrist now occasionally have the word "the" added in front of it, as if the original author had made a mistake by omitting it. This is because the term "the Antichrist" is now so widely used. But rather than a specific person who required a precise article, the Antichrist was regarded as a concept. Strangely, Nietzsche may have played a significant role in the change from the Antichrist to the Antichrist. The Antichrist, a novel he released in 1895, was extremely anti-Christian and popularized the phrase, "God is dead." Christians have returned to completely accepting the Antichrist as a person by the 1970s. Given the significance of Jesus to Muslims, it makes obvious that Islam has its own interpretation of the Antichrist. The Hadith, a collection of statements attributed to the Prophet Muhammad, mentions the deceiving Messiah, despite the fact that the phrase does not really appear in the Quran. In contrast to the Bible, the Hadith provides extensive information regarding who he is, what he will look like, and his origins. A massive man with one eye, a reddish face, and curly hair is how the Antichrist is described in the Hadith. On his forehead, he also has the Arabic characters that spell out disbelief, making it simple to identify him in a crowd. He will appear during times of turmoil, travel to Jerusalem, be followed by Jews and others, and perform miracles, much like the Christian interpretation of the Antichrist. It's not known if he'll rule for 40 days or 40 years, but what is certain is that Jesus will come back to redeem the day. Tradition also holds that the Antichrist is already present on Earth, but is unable to manifest himself just yet. It's a given that someone once believed a prominent figure in history to be the Antichrist. Hitler is one among the more prominent choices, but anyone with authority might be considered. In truth, many people, including Nero, Henry Kissinger, Mikhail Gorbachev, and Napoleon, have claimed that the popes are the Antichrist, born in the image of the greatest power in the world. US presidents are a well-liked candidate for the Antichrist. According to reports, FDR was the first to face significant accusations since many Christians viewed his support for the UN as a little too one-worldly. It was assumed that they were all demonic and evil if the Antichrist was going to come from their group. This relationship somehow survived until the modern period. The Baptist Reverend Jerry Falwell faced criticism for saying in a lecture in 1999 that the Antichrist was, quote, "of certainly Jewish," and that he was most likely already alive. When confronted with the comments, Falwell attempted to defend himself by claiming that he merely meant that the Antichrist must be Jewish because Jesus was. Similar to anti-Semitism, homophobia has been frequently associated with the Antichrist. The Book of Daniel in the Bible is where the concept first appeared. People have interpreted Daniel's mention of a single man who will disobey God as a reference to the Antichrist, despite the fact that he never uses the name and was almost definitely writing to a particular ruler of Palestine when he did so. With that being said, do you believe that the Pope is the Antichrist? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you really enjoyed it. If you like this kind of stuff, then please subscribe, like, and share it with your friends. See you in the next video.